Welcome back, salespreneurs. I have been talking to a lot of listeners recently and learned that most of you are current sales reps. You might have started a side hustle, failed at one, or you're just seeking ideas for something new. And so I've been trying to come up with guests who can help you do that. And today I have a really awesome guest, Roger Comstock, the founder of the $0 Startup, where he's literally helping salespeople with a strategy to ditch the doors, sales floors, to experience more freedom, fulfillment, and more family time. And I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos with him and gotten to know him for the last 10 or 15 minutes. I'm excited for you guys to get to know him as well. Also, I have recently been posting more on YouTube. So if you haven't yet, please go to Salespreneur Stories on YouTube, subscribe, leave a comment on here so I can know how best to creating content for this. So Roger, I'm excited to have you on here. I think, you and I just talked about it recently, just before the show started, but one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you on here is because I've personally tried to start a couple businesses and had a hard time validating the idea, blowing money on things that didn't matter. And I think what you're doing is just really cool. So, for people that don't know who you are or what you're doing, can you give us just like a brief intro?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I just want to say I'm grateful to be here. I'm super thankful to invest time with good people like you, Clay, and I love what you're doing. I think we're living in a time where freedom and the ability to manage our own schedules is really what wealth is, right? The ability to time is worth more than money, and making a lot of money is a lot of fun, but when we have time and the ability to do what we want when we want with the people that we love, it's invaluable. And so for me, myself, I was in a W-2 position for years, and I knew I wanted something else. I wanted to be able to give back. I wanted to be able to do good things. I wanted recurring income, wanted to make a positive dent in the world. And when I started a business, it was scary because it felt risky. I basically quit my job cold turkey and went into my own entrepreneurial venture, and that was scary. And that's not what I encourage my clients to do. It's much easier, much less risk. I did a little bit of sales consulting after I'd left my W-2 job. Then I was on my own and had to kind of figure it out. But my goal is to help people, especially individuals in sales, spend more time with their families, right? And have more fulfillment in life and more freedom. I think it's sad. I've seen so many door-to-door guys leave for months, right? They leave their wives, they leave their kids, they go knock in hot weather. Their wives and kids are at home alone. They're missing out on memories that are really important, right? Kids ball games and dance classes and all this stuff, when they could be at home doing something less brutal on themselves and more fulfilling, that creates more time with the people that matter most. And so I don't know, I just think about at the end of our lives, we really need to figure out what we want, and then we need to be able to reverse engineer how to get that. And most people will look at the end of their life and say, I want to have spent time with my family. I don't want to be in some foreign, state, knocking for 3 to 6 months, trying to make ends meet. And so, anyway, it's a lot of fun, man. I really, truly enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I was having lunch with a friend today, and obviously like going through some of the things that we're currently validating on, and he was talking about how he'd be willing to take a pay cut to go do something and have that freedom, because there is a certain level of freedom, and it's not all about can I make the most. It's I want to be able to have the freedom to build something I'm passionate about, make a dent, like you've mentioned, and own your lifestyle. And I like the I guess the phrase that you have for people that go through your system, lifestyle legends, because there's a lot of things that you want to make time for, from your family to your personal health, being able to work out and own your life. But sometimes having the golden handcuffs can hold you back, whether it's moving across the country or different things like so I guess I'm really curious though. I know you worked for a few different companies. You mentioned uh, you went out on your own to build this business. I'm curious what that transition was like, because I know for you starting that was actually probably like 6 or 7 years ago. But
Yeah.
like finding the first customer, validating the business idea, can you kind of walk us through that early journey of figuring these things out?
Yeah, totally. It was scary, dude. Um I had a great mentor, a really good mentor. He's still a mentor, this individual, great guy. But I had been considering quitting my job and wanting to start my own thing. I had a notebook full of kind of ideas, or not, I shouldn't say full, but I had a good chunk of ideas in there on what I could do. And he just told me, he's like, you need to quit your job. And I that's the one thing I would say, you don't need to quit your job. There's a better way to do it. But he said, you need to quit your job and start this thing. And so I remember I was working at Vivint Solar at the time. This is about 8 years ago now, about 7.5 years ago. So crazy. Time goes so quick. But I was a business intelligence analyst. So I was doing nerdy stuff. I was programming, running stats for some of the executives there to kind of help them know how the sales teams were doing. And I finally just gathered up the courage to go to my boss. Her name was Tessa, and I just said, "Hey, I'm going to go start my own thing." And just like you said, I think it was before we started recording. She wanted to keep me in the golden handcuffs. She was an amazing person, amazing boss, great leader. But she said, "No, no, no. Don't leave. She's like, if you stay here, we'll pay you $10,000 cash if you stay for another 3 months. And if you stay here over time, you have the potential to almost double your salary." Which was already good. And so that was kind of stopped me in my tracks. I was like, oh man, I don't know if this is the best idea. So I went back to my mentor, and he sat me down in a chair at his office, and really cool. He was standing on one side of the room. I was sitting on the other. I can still remember it like yesterday. And he just said, he's basically said, "Roger, you've got to be kidding me." He said, "You put that $10,000 in a bucket and burn it." He says, "You have no idea what you're giving, or what you would be giving up, right? If you didn't do this, you're only focused on right now." And he was exactly right. It's a lot of people are so concerned with the what ifs, and what if it goes wrong? What if I don't make it? What if I fail? What if I fall? What if people don't like me? And those things, they those thoughts come into everyone's minds. But I think it's so important and powerful to be able to renegotiate, right, with yourself, and recognize that you have the ability and potential to do incredible things. Really, whatever you want to do, whatever you put your mind to. Um, and so I did. I gathered up the courage, and I went back to Tessa, and I just said, "Hey, I'm gonna leave and do my own thing." And it was
It,
outside of marrying my sweetheart. It was the best decision I've ever made.
and so at that time, did you know what business you were going to build, or did you just like say, "Hey, I'm out"?
Dude, you this is so funny. I'll tell you what. I was so excited about starting my own thing. What I did, and this took courage. It was scary as I'll get out, but I knew I wanted to do my own thing. So I got on LinkedIn one day. This was back when LinkedIn wasn't cool. And
Yeah.
I was like, "Hey, does anybody need an app built?" I said, "I'll build your app for you." I had no idea what I was doing. Zero clue, zero idea on how to do it. Um, and I was just like, someone's going to ask me. And I had people that were interested in building an app, and I was like, oh man, I better figure this out. And so I started kind of putting pieces together, and then my mentor kind of provided some guidance on ideas. um, and I really just, you asked like how I got my first deal. um, it was crazy. It was absolutely bonkers. After I quit my job, let me tell you the real story of entrepreneurship too, because it's not all like sunshine and rainbows and exciting like social media pictures where you're traveling and everything going well. I was actually on Center Street in Orem, Utah. I remember this, and I was knocking doors because at that point I didn't know how to do lead gen. I just knew I needed money. Like I needed to get deals, right? And I didn't care how I needed to do it. I was gonna go figure out a way. So I started knocking up and down. It was like the middle of June or July. It was hot, on these businesses, asking them if I could build them a website or something. I remember I was sitting on a curb, or I was just thinking, because I got my MBA, and I remember sitting down thinking like, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. I had this nice cushy job, free lunches, great salary, and I quit to go knock on these doors and try to find people this way. and it was hard. It was really tough. But I don't know why it's this way or how this works, but the last door that I knocked that day ended up being a really great deal. It was actually somebody who was working for a local college, BYU, and he had just been given a grant of a good chunk of money to build a website. And I just happened to knock on his door, and he's like, "Yeah, we need this website built," and it ended up being an $11,900 deal, and that kind of got me off to the races, right? And then I closed a $23,000 deal, and then a $68,000 deal, and a bunch of smaller deals, and I realized real quick, I was like, man, this is way better than working for somebody else. And I was having the time of my life, lots of freedom. And I soon learned that you don't have to knock doors, because I don't like knocking doors. I try to get people off the doors, right? You don't have to, man, you don't have, it doesn't have to be so hard. Entrepreneurship, there's ways to mitigate risk and make it a whole lot easier and create recurring income, which is fun. But yeah, man, that was the story with my first deal, and it's tough. I'll say one last thing, and then I want to hear some more questions. But I have a good friend. His name's Zach Oates. He owns a company called Ovation. I was actually we did some stuff a few years ago together. But one of the things he said that I actually really love a lot is he said in entrepreneurship, the front yard is kind of like this idyllic, beautiful place with a front porch swing. Right. You've got kids laughing and you're drinking lemonade and you're smiling and waving as people go by. Fresh cut grass, right? Looks beautiful, but the backyard's on fire, right? And that's the truth, right? There's always problems you're solving. There's always challenges to figure out and understand and fires to put out. But yeah, I mean, that's just important for anybody to understand who's looking to get into entrepreneurship. It's the most fun thing you'll ever do. You'll make a lot of money. You'll have a lot of challenges. It's like solving a puzzle. It's a lot of fun, and it's very helpful to have someone help you along the way.
Yeah, no, I think it's funny to hear kind of how you got your first deal, because it sounds like you didn't even know what you were doing. You were basically a human for hire. You were kind of like, hey, whatever it is that you need built, like I'll figure out a way to do it, and we can negotiate a price. And I think that that's
Yeah.
a pretty scrappy way of starting, because you didn't know what was going to work, and so you let the market tell you what they needed, and then you went and built it, which is what I've learned with a lot of other people that've been on, is being able to validate early instead of spending money on things that don't work out. I also like what you were talking about with the thing with entrepreneurship, how it's pretty lonely at first because you didn't know anyone. And I feel like I can relate to that, because you know, in sales, or really with any job, you go into it and you have a built-in community. It's almost like school all grown up. You show up, they train you exactly how to be good at it, and the failure rate is really low, and you make money, you can pay your bills and get by. Whereas with entrepreneurship, you have this idea, you go knock on a bunch of doors, and you don't think it's going to work out. Like the only difference between you and like somebody else was you knocked that one extra door, and it turned into a $10,000 deal. And so I think that there's like a really good lesson in there for people that are still trying, just to like push a little bit further and go a little bit longer, because there's something at the end of the road for that.
Yeah. Sorry, real quick. I think there's two things to take away from that idea, because it's so important, Clay. One is get help, right? Because life's a lot easier when you have help, right? I learned through the school of hard knocks. I had a mentor, but I was doing it in a way that it was more difficult than it needed to be. So there's much easier ways to do it. So getting help is meaningful. But also, like you said, a lot of times in the book Think and Grow Rich, there's a guy who is digging for gold, and he's just inches away from a fortune, and he leaves, right? Because he's kind of worn out. Somebody else comes along and gets the fortune. And so you're so close in a lot of cases, for a lot of people, whoever's listening to this, to striking gold, right? Hitting the jackpot. But a lot of times people just give up a little too early. And there's a lot of wisdom in knowing when to pivot and when to push, right? Through sometimes we just need to pivot. Other times we just need to keep pushing. But if we're willing to do those things, we will inevitably always be successful, which is helpful to understand.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Roger, I'm really curious to hear like how your business transitioned from just you knocking doors to scaling up and all of that. I'm really curious too, just to hear the story about like how you scaled up and won the ClickFunnels award, the double combo award, because I'm a fan of Russell Brunson's. I've read his books. And so I'm just curious to understand like a little bit more of that journey and what it felt like to stand on stage and get that placard from
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's something I think goals are really important for us to have in life. Not because, and I've learned this, not because what's the best way to put it? There's a great book. It's called The Gap and the Gain, right? And what we want to do is we want to enjoy the journey of growing, developing, and becoming somebody different and better, right? Kind of like a caterpillar to a butterfly. We don't constantly want to be chasing a carrot and then once we get the carrot, moving it back, because then we miss out on the excitement and happiness that life has to give us. We're always chasing happiness instead of experiencing it. And so for me, I've been there and done that, and that's not very fun. Where you're setting a goal, and once you get it, you just set it further, and once you get there, you set it further. So you're constantly chasing. One of the best things to do is to say, okay, here's where I currently am. Here's where I want to get, but I'm going to enjoy the journey too. Like if somebody were to go on a hike, I ran up Mount Timpanogos a while ago, and it was beautiful, very pretty, but there were a lot of beautiful sights along the way to the top, right? A lot of really beautiful things to see and experiences to be had on the way to the summit. The summit was also beautiful in a different way than the journey was, but instead of just constantly thinking like, oh, I just can't wait to get to the top, it's enjoy the smells, enjoy the views, the animals, the trees, right? Like all this experience of life that we get to have, be present. Because a lot of times people get caught up in the thick of thin things where they forget their family. They just get focused on one objective and they don't let anything else really matter or mesh into their lives. And that's not a happy way of living. And for me, I've always prioritized trying to balance things that are important. So my family life, I feel like that's so important. And that's one thing I feel like I've done well at, that I feel like I could show to somebody else how to balance time correctly, right? Something that I've worked on personally is, instead of, again, always chasing a carrot, it's enjoying the experience. And so when you ask, how did I pivot? How did I scale to do this stuff? It's interesting. I started my own agency again about 8 years ago called Tuple. I still have Tuple and it's a blast. It's still producing recurring income, which is a lot of fun. But I was actually at my office. I had an office up in Bluffdale, and I was sitting there one day and I was like, man, I wonder if somebody or anybody would want to learn how to do this, because it's fun, right? Like what I did was a blast. I learned how to do it in a way that wasn't so stressful, didn't require knocking doors, right? Much easier than that. Didn't have to go out for the summer. I had recurring income, right? And so I was like, this would be fun for people to be able to understand. And so I put a post out on Facebook. Again, like I feel like we can have ideas and we can just test them, just see how they go, right? Kind of like a mad science laboratory. And so I put a post out just saying like, hey, would anybody want to learn how to build their own version of this company? And I got a lot of people that were interested. I was messaging people and so I decided to put a little boot camp together in Lehigh. And it was a 6-week program. I literally wrote the curriculum out on a Google Doc. Nothing was recorded. Nothing was fancy. I found this program, this software called EventBee, which allows you to sell tickets for only $1. So that's the fee that they charge, flat rate. And so I was like, I'm going to charge people $497 to come to this 6-week boot camp and see what they think. So it was just kind of like a proof of concept, right? See what people thought. And I got a good chunk of people to sign up. Went through the 6 weeks, and everybody who went through the program loved it. They loved the experience. And so I thought, holy cow, like this could be something good, you know? And so I started, it's interesting. If anybody's considering doing anything like this, it was a lot of fun the way I set it up. I started promoting it a little bit more, saying, hey, like if you're wanting to learn how to do this, I'll show you. And I started charging people, and all I would do is I would record the calls of me teaching. these people, and then I would put those into a program. And so this program became a series of recordings, and then I would ask those people that went through that 6 weeks that was recorded what they thought and what I could change and questions they had. And then that became all of the rest of the curriculum. And then I started piecing together what everybody else needed and made it very structured. And that's how $0 Startup was formed. And so it was kind of this, it was really an accident. I was not planning at all on I wasn't planning on doing this full time. Not even one bit. I actually had a back-end tech guy who told me, he's like, there'll come a day when you're going to be focused more on $0 Startup than you are on Tuple. And I just kind of laughed it off, kind of like, I don't know, man. Right. Like, but it grew and it grew pretty quick, which was awesome. And so that was a lot of fun. I learned all about, really how to identify the best fit for a product and really how to help them, right? How to really provide help to people in the B2C world instead of the B2B. So at Tuple, it was an agency, so we were serving businesses. At $0 Startup, we're serving consumers, right? It's business to consumer. So lots of fun, man. I love it.
I'm curious. So $0 Startup right now, is it more of a cohort based thing, or how do you set that up?
Good question. I don't do cohorts. I don't like that. I don't like that system of a cohort. And what I've found, this is really important for anybody listening to understand. It's so crucial for anybody wanting to experience any success in business to recognize that you don't have to listen to one person and take what they say as the only way to do something. Unless it's God, right? Well, I believe in God, and if he says something, I want to do it. But what I mean is, like, you have Dave Ramsey who will say, no debt, cut up your credit cards. And then you've got Grant Cardone who says, have no cash on hand, invest all of it, right? And doesn't matter. And so if you subscribe wholeheartedly to Dave Ramsey, then there's going to be some confusion, right? About what Grant Cardone is saying. And same with Cardone, right? If you subscribe to him, then it'll be confusing when you hear Dave Ramsey. I'll tell you what I mean right now. Like, I think Alex Hormozy is cool. I don't think that he's like, everything he says is perfect, right? And I think some people listen to him and just think like, no matter what Alex says, I have to do. I think he's awesome. And I think he's a very smart business person, but we have to be able to step back and objectively say, okay, what is he doing that's working well? And can I apply it to my business? And what is Russell doing that's working well? Can I apply it to my business? There's some things that Russell teaches that I don't agree with, right? And things that I love that Russell teaches. I've read Expert Secrets like 7 or 8 times. I love that book.
Everyone should read it like 3 times.
At least. Yeah, such a good great book. Totally. Traffic Secrets is good. .com Secrets is good. All of his material is great, but there's some things that he teach that can actually cause challenges for people if they're not careful, right? If they don't know what they're doing. And so all I'm saying is Russell's the man. He's incredible. I love him. But what we need to do is take what people are sharing in the business world and say, I like these things, and I'm going to put them into my business and apply them and see what works. So the reason I even went on that tangent is you asked about a cohort, and there's some people that say like, hey, you've got to have a cohort, right? You got to move people through as a group to be able to make it cohesive and create a community. And while that can be helpful, there's another system I've found that can be just as helpful, and that's people can enroll into the program and it's at their own pace. That way I don't have to say, hey, you have to wait for this cohort to start, right? Some people's programs are, you can enroll at the first of the year and then you got to wait for a year and then you can re-enroll and things. What I like is the idea of, if a salesperson right now is looking to get out of the rat race, they want to ditch the doors or the sales floors or want to have more fulfillment, more freedom, more family stuff, then they can get out of that world right now, right? By getting into a program and going through at their own pace. And I've got coaches that I've hired that will help them through that process at their own rate. So we've had students who get results really quickly, right? Within a couple of weeks. It's so fun to watch. And other students take their time a little bit through the program. And I like that it's at their own pace. It allows them to stay at their current jobs and continue doing what they're doing while building up income on the side. Um, a couple cool stories I'll tell you, like testimonials of, it's crazy. Like
Yeah.
we have a sales rep who got into the program. He had a sales job out in Spanish Fork, Utah. Um, he had actually hired somebody to help him because he was so busy with that. And then he had a real estate portfolio down in southern Utah. And he got into the program and he just wanted extra income, wanted more freedom. He ended up making an extra $150,000 in 1 year, just goofing around with this stuff on top of what he was making in his sales and his real estate stuff. So he got in and just like, I just want to, kind of toy around with this and see how it works. And he crushed it. Did a great job. He wasn't doing it full time or anything. He just figured it out, which is really cool. Another guy, a great friend of mine. He is a VP of sales for a supplement flavoring company. And he was busy, obviously. I mean, you could imagine a VP of sales, right? Managing salespeople. But he got in the program, wanted some extra money, some recurring income. And he made, in a little over a year, 120 grand on top of what he was making as a VP of sales, just using kind of this framework. So it's really cool to be able to see. It makes me really happy. It's a fulfilling experience, kind of a dream job for me to watch people kind of get out of these paradigms of I have to work for somebody else. That same person that I just talked about, I was in a meeting with him once. It was really cool. He said, Roger, he's like, I don't care if my business if the people that I'm working for let me go tomorrow, I now know how to make money. And that was so rewarding, right, to hear that, because he's free, right? He's free. He doesn't have to depend on somebody else hiring him or employing him in order to get what he wants out of life, which is exciting.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I like about what you're doing as well, Roger, is I feel like I see a lot of these courses or whatever online that talk about affiliate marketing and different things, but I feel like the types of business that you're promoting actually drive results for the customers, and it's not hard to drive those results. It's not a fluffy make believe business that you're selling. Like, you actually drive a lot of results. The other thing that I think is really interesting, I just talked about this on my last podcast, but especially for B2B tech salespeople, I think there's actually a really big opportunity here.
Yeah.
Because for the last 5 to 7 years, maybe longer, tech has been the most well-funded, tech-enabled, sales-trained organization in the world, right? Like, you couldn't have a better sales force than people that have been in tech for the last few years. And with how the businesses you operate work is you're selling to a business operator. So you're literally selling B2B and helping them run their marketing essentially, but you get to keep 100% of the commissions. So it's not like I sell this 20K deal for this company and then I get a 10% commission. I sell 20K and I get to keep all the recurring revenue, which I think uh, is a game changer for people. But even like what you mentioned, that person said, if I lost my job, I feel like I now know how to make money. I think there's a lot of power and confidence that comes in that, because I remember the first time I closed a deal on the door in sales, or my first B2B contract. I just remember feeling like, oh wow, I know how to make money, and I did, because I'm in sales and I learned how to make sales. But now this is a whole different game where in entrepreneurship you're doing it for yourself, and so it's another layer to that pyramid. And so I guess for people that don't know, I guess what $0 startup is, you're training sales reps how to build their own business, recurring revenue, by selling B2B. Can you kind of help me understand like what the nuts and bolts are? Like, what is it exactly you're doing for businesses, and why should people try this out?
Totally, man. Yeah, it's the funnest thing and the most fun thing in the entire world. I don't know if funnest is a word, but it this is why. Like you said, I can't remember if we were recording or this is what you're chatting about before, but a lot of reps are looking for ways to become free. They're looking for passive income, for ways to create freedom, right, with their families and people they love. But a lot of those ways to do that are highly capital intensive. For example, real estate, right? People are like, man, I got to go buy a property, but that's insane right now, especially with the market. right? And so let's say that they're going to buy a $500,000 single family home to rent out. If they're going to buy it and it's not owner occupied, it's going to be in an investment property, the lender is going to want 20% down on that property, meaning that they're going to want 100K down, right? And then with rates where they're at, they might cash flow like $0 to $200 a month, maybe, depending on what their mortgage is and who their renters are. And so it can be very capital intensive for small amounts of cash flow. So my framework that I teach people, I call it the $0 framework. And it is, number one, we're going to find people who need help, right? And they're everywhere. I like to focus on the home service industry. That's where I focused a lot at Tuple, right? Like think about HVAC companies, electricians, plumbers. All of these businesses are absolutely stellar, right? Because they're generally good old boys that love what they do. They have a high skill set, but they just don't know how to market their businesses, but they need to market, right? And so there's a value gap there. So if you were to go talk to one of those people, let's just call somebody Bob the plumber, right? Bob the plumber, maybe he's been in business for 5 years, but if you were to look up plumbers in his area, maybe all of his competitors show up and he doesn't. That means he's losing money. So if you were to go to Bob, and this would be the second step of the $0 framework, and say, hey, like, let me help you, right? Let me make sure people can find you and that you're online. And if people are looking for you, you show up with your competition and are making money that way. And you say it'll be, I don't know, you could come up with whatever price you want since they get to choose, right? But let's just say hypothetically, they charge $1,500 a month to Bob. Well, what's great is Bob can pay them the $1,500. So now they've got money in their account. The second step is we get paid. So number one, we find somebody who needs help. That's Bob. Number two, we're going to get paid for what we're going to do for Bob. So let's say Bob gives us the $1,500. Number three, we're going to provide value for Bob. And so what's so cool is that you don't actually have to do the work, right? You can outsource that work, kind of like a general contractor. You can subcontract it. I call them pocket-sized partners, to individuals that will actually do the heavy lifting. So let's say you pay another group $300 a month or $300 to $500 a month to do the actual work. Well, in that case, man, you're making $1,200 to $1,000 a month on a recurring basis, right? Without having to do any of the work. It's crazy, right? You're not even doing the marketing for Bob. You're having somebody else do it, but you're just collecting the recurring income. And just like you said, a lot of these people in sales are used to selling for somebody else. And so they get a small little commission, right? It's like they've got business, and this drives me crazy but it's life and it's sales. It's how it works. These business owners will say, hey, I want to hire you as a sales rep, go close a deal and I'll pay you 10% or 15% of the deal. What I'm telling people is, hey, let me show you how to provide a product to people and collect 100%, right? You get all of it. I don't take any equity in my students or clients' businesses. I just tell them to copy and paste what I've done. I could take equity, but I don't want to. I want them to have that experience of, it's so much fun, right? Like when you get I've got texts from students. It's so great when they get their first payment. They're like, this is so cool. But then they get their second payment, automatically they see it come through and they're like, oh my gosh, it works, right? Like it works. And it's fun because people realize that the clients that I work with realize that you don't need a lot of people to make money. So for example, like if you're going to go out and sell a product that's low ticket, I'm not a big fan of low ticket sales because it means a lot of volume is required, right? Which is risky because that means a lot of marketing dollars, right? So what I would rather do is sell a higher ticket product, and you can do it on a recurring basis. But what's nice about that is when you have a high ticket product, you don't need a lot of people to make a lot of money. So let's say one of these clients I have, let's call him Jim, right? To protect, we'll just say Jim is a student. Let's say he goes out, and let's say hypothetically he closes 10 people. And let's say that those 10 people are paying Jim $1,000 in profit per month. He's making 10 grand a month, right? Pretty cool, right? Without having to do any of the actual work. It's outsourced. So it's a great way. That's why I call people in the program, like behind me, you see here, lifestyle legends, because they're creating a lifestyle. Like it's so fun. I golf whenever I want. I hang out with my sweetheart. I love to go to my nieces and nephews' fun things where we've got a kid on the way right now. And we're so excited. I will never miss my child's sports games or dance class. We don't know if it's a boy or girl yet, but like, no matter what, I'm going to be there. I will be there because I've made a commitment to do it. And I'm reverse engineering my life to make that absolutely certain. Be there for that kid. I'm super excited about it. And I love providing that or helping people understand how they can do that.
Yeah, I think that that's a big thing for a lot of salespeople, because everyone gets into sales because they want to start or buy a business, but then there's a lot of gaps in that process, and I think it's cool to hear how you're doing that. Also, I mean, the HVAC blue collar industry is so huge, and I actually think that on that same topic of tech people having a huge opportunity, I think there is an opportunity there, because you take this huge supply of dense talent that understands how the internet works and how a tech stack works and how all these different things work, and you say, hey, let me do that for your blue collar business. Like, there's just a huge service that can be provided there for those businesses, just because of people's different experiences that they're able to bring and offer for those businesses.
Yeah, I'll say too, right now there's like this, you've probably seen it, people listening have probably seen it. On LinkedIn, there's this rage about like buying businesses,
Yeah.
right? Going out there and buying service-based businesses. They make it sound like it's just this easy thing that won't require any work. And business requires work, right? Like it will. And so it's important that people understand, like, if the owner of the business that they want to buy was just sitting on their duff collecting hundreds of thousands of dollars in recurring income, why would they be selling their business? Right? Like they're selling it because there's a lot of work to do and they don't want to do the work anymore. So they're going to sell it. So the challenge is when somebody's like, I should go buy businesses and just kind of roll them up. Well, there's a couple challenges. One is that they're going to have more work than they thought they would have. Number two is they're going to have investors. If you're going to buy a business, it usually costs a lot of money, and you're going to use either private equity or or debt, right, to purchase that business, and that means you're going to have people to answer to. I don't like having people to answer to. That's the other thing that I would say about this business is so much more fun, because I don't have investors that are barking down my back, saying, hey, we need these returns right now, and we need you to be at work right now making sure that your salespeople get these results, right? Like, what's so fun about bootstrapping a business, and this is what I teach my clients, a strategy that allows them to bootstrap so they don't need venture capital. They don't need private equity. It's really cool. Like they can start a business that from the ground up that's very lucrative without the need to answer to other investors or to pool money together to buy it. And that's a really important thing to understand. That's not really being talked about so much on LinkedIn, because all that's shown, it's kind of like the front yard, like we were talking about, everybody just kind of waving, right? And like this perfect cut grass. But there's other things that people need to understand in business, and it's not always social media, traveling, and again, sunshine and rainbows. There's more to it, and so it's fun. I'll say this thing, and then I want to answer any other your questions you have. I like to think of business as a vehicle, right? So if you and me wanted to go to New York right now, we could take a pogo stick. We could, like, right? You and me could stand next to each other, grab a pogo stick. We could hop our way to New York, but it's going to be miserable and it's going to be slow, right? It's not going to be ideal, but it will get us there. In life, this is what we see so many people doing, right? Especially like, it's killer. I watch people. I like to think of like a box that has ROI written on it in Sharpie, and they're just putting tons of time and effort into this box and getting so little out of it. They're not getting very much. I'm like, man, that sucks, right? Like you might as well have a box where you're not putting a ton into it, but you're getting a lot out of it. And so what I mean by that is you could trade the pogo stick for a car. It's going to require a little more of an investment, but it's going to be worth it, right? It's going to get you there much, much faster than the pogo stick. And then the best thing to do is to get in a vehicle that you don't even have to think about. Buy a plane ticket, right? Get on a plane and get to your destination. And so I like to think of with this framework that I teach, it's a lot like helping people get on a jet, right? And saying, hey, here's a great way to stay at your current job and create recurring income on the side. Use it for investing, use it for paying off debt, use it for fun travel, and then build it up to a point where you feel like you're comfortable, then quit your job. That's so cool because it's risk free, right? Like they can keep their job, make money on the side, leave their job when they feel comfortable, and now they've got recurring income coming in, and they're business owners, and they could go hire their own salespeople, right? It's so much fun, Clay. It's so much fun, man.
Yeah, no, and I love that because the analogy of the pogo stick versus taking the airplane. Because when I first got into tech, one of the sales reps that was mentoring me really helped me understand the importance of high leverage tasks. And he said, hey, if we break down your time into hours and like how much you're making an hour, what are you doing during those times? Like, is it most effective for you to make cold calls or build relationships with these certain clients that can help you make more? And so that was like one of the things that helped me uh, really like double my income that year was learning how to focus on the right customers that could pay more or that had bigger influence in the spheres that I was trying to sell to. And so that business started coming to me. And so same thing with like your pogo stick analogy. If you're able to learn how to leverage your time and leverage yourself out of a lot of the dull tasks, you're able to have more lifestyle freedom, increase your income, and also just have like different investment opportunities. Because if you can make additional side income doing something like this, then you can dump that into real estate or into growing the business even more. So I think that there's a lot of power in learning how to leverage up your time.
Yes, dude, totally. Here's another quick kind of thing to piggyback what you're saying, Clay, because what's so nice is Tuple has been like a little golden goose for me. I've used it to be able to fund my other businesses, which is really cool. I've got a business called Comstock Consulting. I had a business that I started, kind of another one of those mad science projects that was really fun, called Flipper, that I used Tuple cash flow to fund, which was super fun. And $0 Startup began from this idea of Tuple, right? And so what's really nice is people can build a business that provides extra freedom for other things too, right? Instead of thinking like, I've got to go take out a loan or I've got to go raise money, you can build a business that's much more safe because it's yours. I will say, like, if people are considering right now, like investing, right, there's a lot of places to put money. This will surprise maybe listeners because it surprised me. I was definitely the most unintelligent person in this room. I was some of Utah's best business leaders I was with. One of those individuals was a guy that owns a $35+ billion fund. And it was crazy. So I was sitting with all these individuals. They're brilliant. And they were all talking about where to put money to invest. And I thought for sure, they would all know like one place to put money. They would all agree, like, here's where we should put money. And they had different opinions, right? It's like, we should put it here. No, we should put it here. And what I've found personally is that I've invested in real estate. I've invested in the stock market. I've invested in crypto. I mean, here's me being super vulnerable. I lost over $250,000, quite a bit over $250,000 in crypto back in 2021. Right. And those are investments. It's like, ouch, like that's a little painful. But what I found is that like the best investors, they know how to fail forward and they learn from their experiences. And I've learned that the very best place to get a return on my money is in my own business. It will never fail you. Right? Because when you put money in the stock market, you're banking on other people. When you put money into crypto, you're banking on other projects, right? And a lot of those are pretty speculative. When you put money into real estate, the market is fluctuating. When you're running your own business, you are able to call the shots, right? It's like, these are the results I want to get, and I'm going to go get them. And it helps to, I mean, I could tell you, if we had more time, I'd tell you about some of the returns that you can get in business. It's so much fun, man. It's so much fun. But anyway, yeah.
No, and I've listened to some of the video stories that are on your website, and it's cool to hear how there's people that say they wish they had just tried this earlier or known about it, about how they can drive essentially like lead gen to these different companies and not have to invest a bunch of time and effort into it. So I guess just as like a final note, I'm curious if you're speaking to 25, 27, 28-year-old sales reps, like if there was, one piece of advice you want to leave them with, what would you share with the listeners?
Dude, that's such a good question, Clay. Man, I love that. I think, um, dude, I think in life we juggle a lot of balls, right? There's a lot of things we're trying to balance. Some of the balls that we juggle are rubber and they'll bounce back, and other balls are glass. If we drop them, they'll break, right? And I think when people are young, well, we're both still young. I'm still young. I'm 36. I'm a young guy, but as I've gotten older, what I've realized is that you don't you want to make sure that you don't lose track of the things that matter most. You don't want to drop the glass balls. So these young sales guys who are trying to take over the world and think that that's all that matters, it doesn't. It does not, right? Like the things that matter in life, and this is the advice I'd give anybody. I believe that fulfillment has a formula, and I believe it's gratitude, growth, and giving. I think those three things will make somebody very happy, truly happy in life. Like if you're constantly finding ways to be grateful for things that you have, small things, the sun coming up in the morning, your sweetheart, having your dog come up and sit on your lap, like that, relishing in those moments, being grateful for that, right? And then finding ways to give. A lot of people, they have this idea of like, when I have a lot of money, then I'll give it away. Well, you're not going to get a lot of money unless you're willing to give before. You've got to give, right? Like you got to find ways to give. You got to look for opportunities to go do something for somebody else, whether that's a smile or a hug or sitting with somebody and listening or paying somebody something, even if it's challenging, even if you feel like you don't have the money, you pay them anyway, you give, right? And you'll find, I don't know how it works. I do. It's God. It's him. He does it. Things always come back. Right? They do. They always will. You give, you'll get it back. I always say, if you give a Skittle, you'll get the bag back. You really will. Right? Like it works. People that don't trust me, go try it. Go try it. The last thing is growth, right? Like these young bucks that are out there trying to figure out what life's all about. You don't want to be stagnant, right? You don't want to just get caught up in Groundhog Day. I love my job because every day I'm doing something different. It's so fun. And I can, like this morning, I woke up, just to give you an idea, when you own your own business, this is what we'll end on. This is awesome because I woke up this morning and I went up to Midway to play 18 holes of golf at Wasatch, which was awesome. So much fun. Wasatch Mountain. If you're a golfer, it's a beautiful course. I played with my father-in-law from Texas and my brother-in-law because there's no way I was going to miss that. Right. And thankfully, I don't have a boss telling me when I need to be at work. So I went and played golf. I got home and I went to the gym for a couple hours, or an hour and a half. Changed, went to the gym. And that was great. I was able to relax, enjoy that. I didn't need to be into work at any time, right? I got home and I got into the tub. People might think that's weird, but I love to take a relaxing tub. I relaxed. I did a lot of work from the tub, right? Like it was awesome. But it's great because this day I can think about, man, I am so grateful for this life. And this is why if you can't tell, like if people are listening, I am so passionate about this stuff. I want to help people have this life so bad, right? On Thursday, me and my sweetheart are going for massages and do a fun little dinner. And on Friday, I'm going to golf again, right? It's really a lot of fun. And it doesn't mean there's not a lot of work. Sometimes I'm in the office until 10. Sometimes I don't work very much at all during the day, but it's so much more fun to manage your own schedule. Right. And that's part of this kind of growth so again, gratitude, growth, and giving. And if people are willing to grow their skill sets, grow their understanding, be willing to invest in themselves, right? If they don't know how to do something, if they're in sales right now, if they're knocking doors, going out for the summer, leaving their wives and kids, and they're like, man, there has to be another way. They've got to be willing to grow. And it's so funny because some people who are considering getting into the program, it's so funny. They'll be like, oh man, I just can't do it. I don't know. I don't know if I should do it. What if it doesn't work? And it's so funny because it's like, brother, nothing changes if nothing changes. if you're not willing to, and I can say that from it's from the horse's mouth, because I literally had to leave an amazing job to do this. So I get how uncomfortable it is, but people have to be willing to do something hard. They've got to be willing to step out of the ship, right? And get uncomfortable and that grow, because that's where growth happens. It doesn't happen living Groundhog Day, right? Waking up and doing the same job 9 to 5 all over again. Like, they've got to be willing to say, you know what? This is not the life I want. I'm going to change. It's going to be hard. It might even require some money. I got to invest into myself to learn these skill sets, but I've got to be willing to change. And that will get people far, and that will make people happy. It'll give them the 3 F's that I have, like, everywhere. They will have more fulfillment in their life, guaranteed. They will definitely be more fulfilled. They will spend more time with their families, which I think is the most important thing in the whole world. And they will have more freedom, which is stellar. And so anyway, man, like, I just love this stuff. It's a lot of fun, Clay.
No, it's been a blast, just kind of understanding your story and what this can do for other people, especially like me. I'm a sales rep on a journey to, build businesses. I've dabbled in real estate, but I know there's a lot of people listening here who are looking for that next thing, and I think it's awesome to just bring your story to the listeners. So I guess just before we go, do you have anywhere like people want to find out about you or get in touch with your team? Like, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, dude, good question. They can go to ditchthedoors.com, and we can get in touch that way. They can book a call to chat with somebody on the team. They can go to $0startup.com. You can go follow me on Instagram, Roger.Comstock. You can send me a DM. I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you personally too. Like, I feel like I really love the clients that I work with. I love them. And truly, like, I respect them. I want them to be happy. And so this isn't, I will say, what I do, I feel a lot of pride in, because it's not a program that people get into. It's like, hey, good luck. I hope you do all right. Like, I actually give a dang about them. I want them to be successful. Right. And I really want to help rubber hit the road and make sure they're doing well. And so, I mean, that's a great way to do it. Instagram, Roger.Comstock, ditchthedoors.com, $0startup.com. You can listen to my podcast, Fulfilled. Any one of those things, brother.
Cool, man. I will, I'll put those in the show notes and people can check them out. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. So grateful to be here.